Remember how last week I made a video, and if you don't remember, by the way, that means we cannot be friends because clearly you didn't watch the video and that hurts my feelings. I uploaded a video about how some people might not necessarily be the quote-unquote right royal material or the wrong kind of royal, and that might sometimes therefore spell bad news for the royal family that they have married into. And the point of that video wasn't necessarily to make a judgment call about people, but how, like any other job, some people just have the aptitude for something and some don't. The very same day that I uploaded last week's video, on Monday, June 15th, Oslo District Court handed down the verdict for Marius Borg Hoy. If you've been tuning into my videos earlier in the year, around I think February, March, we were covering that case as it was ongoing. And now, or last week I should say, the verdict was handed down. He has been found guilty of 2 out of the 4 counts of rape that he was accused of, along with a few other offenses that are of a less serious nature relative to sexual assault. As such, he's been sentenced to 4 years in prison. Prosecutors really pushed for 7, but the judges went for 4. This, of course, was all happening while his mother's emails and friendship to Jeffrey Epstein was exposed to the public. So all in all, a very bad look for the Norwegian royal family, which has actually seen its popularity plummet in the wake of these controversies. A Nordstat survey that was released on the 21st of February this year during the trial showed a fall in the number of Norwegians favoring keeping the monarchy to a record low of 60%, from 70% in January, and a rise to 27% from 19% in those wanting a different system of governance. So all of these headlines aren't just restricted to paper or digital. They're having real life consequences, and they're effectively affecting, I hate that, and they are affecting the integrity of the Norwegian monarchy. Add on top of that the fact that Marius's lawyers have already lodged an appeal, which means this case is going to be dominating headlines all over again at some point in the future. And things are only going to get worse for the Norwegian monarchy, because instead of people moving on and forgetting about the case, as humans tend to do, the trial will basically play out all over again in the headlines, thereby renewing the anti-monarchy sentiments that Marius and his mother have recently inspired. Now, what complicates things further in this case is the fact that Marius's mother, mette-marit, is suffering from a terrible disease called pulmonary fibrosis. Marius has actually requested leniency from the court and asked them to not imprison him because he wants to spend time with his mother. He's worried he won't have enough time with her. Now, it sounds harsh what I'm about to say, but the law should treat everyone equally, whether you're a member of the royal family or a homeless person on the street. And there are many people behind bars right now who have family members who are either sick or dying, and they're not being released. So perhaps Marius should have thought about this well before things got out of hand. I believe his mother was diagnosed with this terrible disease back in 2018. And so he's not very young. We're around the same age. And he was old enough back then to know right from wrong, and to know that if he went down this path, he might not see his family again. Now, of course, he didn't know that because these people operate as though they rule the world and they're never going to get caught. But what I'm saying is he's not necessarily getting any sympathy from me. I wanted to mention mette-marit's disease early in the video because I'm not here, as I said, to kick her while she's down, so to speak, make judgment calls, etc., when she is clearly going through a very difficult time in her life, not just surrounding her health, but of course her son, whom she clearly loves very much. So I just want to make it clear that whatever I'm about to say is just pure, simple fact. Earlier in the year, when Marius's trial was still ongoing, I brought up his troubled past and how it very likely is connected to his now deeply troubled adulthood. A huge part of his childhood and why it was so troubled largely had to do with his mother's background, her lifestyle choices, and her taste in men. For starters, her parents, much like Meghan and Diana's actually, were divorced, so she is a product of a broken home. This matters. Again, I'm not making a judgment call. It's not her fault. But this is why I respect Catherine, the Princess of Wales's initiative with the first 5 years and early childhood, because it so matters how we start off in life. And parents need to be made aware of that. But I'm not a parent. I'm not going to delve into that in any detail. Her father, who, by the way, was a convicted felon, ended up divorcing her mother and marrying an exotic dancer, as the euphemism goes. This is also an important point because mette-marit went on to date not one, but 2 felons, one of whom fathered, you guessed it, Marius Borg Hoy. All in all, the picture that was painted of mette-marit once her relationship with the prince became public was less than stellar, to say the least. For example, one publication at the time called her a commoner than most bride. And the general opinion at the time was that she was unsuitable for the role of future queen. Fast forward 25 years later, especially with the revelation of the Epstein files, and it becomes quite difficult to argue against that assessment. It goes without saying, I think, that what mette-marit and her son Marius have been accused of and found guilty of doing, either in a court of law or in the court of public opinion, make Harry and Meghan's shenanigans look relatively petty. And that is precisely the key word for today in this later half of the video: petty. By now, it's been almost a decade, if you want to round it off, of this silly game of will they, won't they, that the media constantly indulges in for the sake of clickbait. Although I don't even think Meghan and Harry have a lot of gravitas and pull anymore when it comes to clickbait. Just look at even YouTube views. Their names just don't pull in the eyeballs anymore. I think I personally switched off the will they, won't they. I think I personally switched off the will they, won't they game back in 2023. Once I'd realized that it was just that, a game. And I'm certainly not here to play it again. But as I sifted through headline after headline, are they going to accept King Charles's offer? Did King Charles really offer them a royal residence? I didn't even bother clicking on these articles to read them, but I did find myself thinking, is this what the British monarchy has been reduced to? A source of gossip in the sidebar of rags like the Daily Fail? And over what? A stupid, endless debate on whether 2 private citizens in America are going to show up or not. Of course, the British royal family has dominated tabloids well before Meghan and Harry were even born, so I'm not saying that this is something new or peculiar to them. But in the past, the stories were more centered on infidelity, the breakdown of marriages, abdication, and even now, recently, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Sarah Ferguson's involvement with the Epstein files. What all of these things have in common is that they're not necessarily petty. They might sound like salacious gossip, but when you think about them on an individual level, the breakdown of a marriage, someone's been cheated on, the Epstein files, need I say more? They're not, yeah, I can't talk. They're not petty. And some would say, especially with the Epstein files, it's a matter of public interest. What public interest do we get when we have to be subjected day in and day out, year in and year out, to the whole will they, won't they charade? This whole narrative, this whole worldwide privacy tour that they've embarked on in 2020 has well and truly gone past its expiry date. So much so that it doesn't even stink anymore. It doesn't even reek. It's just there. It's irrelevant. And all it does is inconvenience the royal family by negatively affecting its reputation. We've all seen it. The polls have not exactly been in favor of the monarchy. And yes, of course, the Epstein files and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's arrest, etc., have had a major effect on the health of the monarchy's integrity. Don't get me wrong. It's not just Meghan and Harry. But I just find it really sad that King Charles III's reign is really going to be remembered for those 2 things. The Epstein files and how poorly that was handled. And a lot of that blame, a lot of people think, goes to the late Queen Elizabeth for protecting her son. And then, of course, the Meghan and Harry debacle. The Meghan and Harry show. Granted, this video, like its predecessor from last week, is more about being careful with who you let in to the family, whether it's the royal family or a normal family, any old family. I read your comments, completely agree. We should all be discerning about who we let in or who we hire. And I believe that Meghan Markle and unfortunately mette-marit and her son Marius are prime examples of how the wrong kind of royal, people who don't necessarily have the correct aptitude or personality, or yes, I'm going to say it, even background to join a particular institution, can really make things sour. They can really poison the well. But it's not just people who marry into the royal family in this case. We should also be careful of whom we allow to remain. And I'm looking at Andrew Mountbatten Windsor when I say that. Because yes, these other parties we've spoken about today married into the family, but Andrew was born into it. That doesn't mean that he should have been allowed to stay for as long as he did. Because when you leave something rotten in a well long enough, it's eventually going to poison it. And that's all I have to say today. Let me know what you think in the comments below. This is kind of a continuation of the video I posted last week. So if you haven't seen it, do check it out. And yeah, looking forward to seeing what you have to say about this. Thank you so much for all your support. I will see you in the next one.